What's up, Dolphins fans? Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, coming to you after that disappointing Thanksgiving loss to the Green Bay Packers, where Miami just looked like the soft football team that everyone paints them to be, and the allegations that were made against this coaching staff, against Tua Tagovailoa, well, they were not beat last night as they lost 30-17 in Green Bay. And we have a lot of news to get to following that loss. One positive piece of news, most of the rest are negative. It's a little bit of conflicting news on today's show. Let's start with the positives, and that is Kendall Fuller, the top boundary corner opposite of Jalen Ramsey, who has missed the last 3 games against the Raiders, Patriots, and then obviously last night against Green Bay with a concussion that he suffered against the Rams. He should be back against the New York Jets, which makes sense because if the Dolphins felt like he was going to miss 4 games or longer, they might have placed him on IR. Now you are limited in terms of having players come back from IR. You only get 8 per season. The Dolphins have already activated 5 players, so maybe they didn't want to do that. But either way, that is good news for Miami because although people might be down on this team right now, and don't get it twisted, I am one of those people, there is still a glimmer of hope if you are someone who wants this team to make the postseason, which, listen, I get some fans who realize this team's not going to win a Super Bowl and they should get a higher draft pick and lose games. I understand that line of thinking, but as a fan, I think you should always root for your team to make the postseason. That's what I will be doing. That's what this channel will be doing. So with 5 games remaining on the schedule, you need to win every single one of them to finish the year 10-7 and make the playoffs. And if the Dolphins want to do that, they absolutely need Kendall Fuller out there because he's been fantastic in the 8 games he played. Him and Jalen Ramsey have been one of the top cornerback duos in the NFL. And with a game against the New York Jets coming in a week and a half in Miami, you need to have your top 2 corners out there when you're going up against Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. Yeah, that offense has been abysmal in New York, and Aaron Rodgers looks cooked and dysfunctional, but those are 2 really good wide receivers they have. So having Kendall Fuller back against the Jets is going to be big, and it is ultimately huge for Miami due to injuries to Kader Kohou and Cam Smith, which we're going to get to in just one second. But before we do that, I do want to get your thoughts on the game last night. What is your takeaway? Let me rephrase this. We just mentioned the playoffs. Do you think the Dolphins still have a chance to make the playoffs this season? Type Y for yes or type N for no. All right, let's get into some of the bad news surrounding the Miami Dolphins, and it stays in the cornerback room with Kader Kohou. Kohou left the game in the first half with a back injury. He got injured on that play that Jordan Love threw over the middle of the field. It got tipped up in the air, and then him and Christian Watson kind of collided going for the ball, and Kohou was trying to make a game-changing play where he was going to get an interception. Well, he got kind of twisted up, and he immediately grabbed his side/back area, and that is the injury for Kohou. He was originally kind of tested for both concussion and back injury. He was cleared on the concussion side of it, so the only reason why he did not return in that game was due to his back injury. And Mike McDaniel in his press conference this morning said that the injury does not look super serious, but more tests will occur. So that's good news for the Dolphins. You can stay mellow. Shout out to Mellow Seltzer, one of my new favorite drinks. If you want more questions on Mellow Seltzer, I wish I had some last night for the game because I was getting really frustrated. Hit me up on Twitter and social media, Nic_Rohloff. But yeah, it's good that Kohou's injury doesn't look super serious. McDaniel did not specify if he would be able to go against the Jets in a week and a half, a little bit of an extended break in between games, obviously playing Thursday night. It would be nice to have him because the Dolphins secondary hasn't been whole in quite a while, at least the cornerback department. But hopefully he is able to go, and it is good news that it is not super serious. Same can't really be said for Cam Smith, who ultimately filled in for Kohou once he got hurt. Because remember, with Kendall Fuller out, the starting cornerback room was going into this game. It was Jalen Ramsey, it was Kader Kohou, and then it was Storm Duck, the UDFA, which, by the way, we could have a conversation about him and how he is very clearly not an NFL caliber corner to this point. And the depth at this cornerback room will have to be addressed in the offseason for sure. But let's stay on track with Cam Smith because it is a dislocated shoulder, and that means that he is probably going to be out for an extended period of time. Wouldn't shock me if they place him on IR. Wouldn't shock me if his season is over. And if you're talking about Cam Smith, you're talking about a bust-worthy player here. And when you talk about busts in the NFL, I really only think you can put first and second round picks into that category. But Cam Smith falls in that category. Remember, he was a second round pick in 2023. He played in like 0 games last season with Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator. Many fans were upset at the lack of playing time for the rookie out of South Carolina. And then many fans were like, okay, Vic Fangio's gone. Cam Smith's going to get an opportunity to be that third guy behind Kendall Fuller and Jalen Ramsey on the boundary, and let's see what the second-year man out of South Carolina could do. Why Chris Greer drafted him in the second round? Well, when Cam Smith has been on the field, he's been absolutely atrocious, and then he's dealt with injuries all year long. He missed the first 4 games of the season because of an injury. He was placed on IR. So he already was activated off of IR once this season. Now, it was one of those ones before the year that doesn't count on people coming back because him and River Craycraft were placed before the season began. But either way, he is likely heading to a multiple week missed absence again. Cam Smith has just had a nightmare start to his career, and I gotta be honest, based off what I've seen when he's on the field, I get he's not even played a full 16, 17 games, so he technically is still a rookie in that retrospect. He just has not been an NFL caliber corner. Like, there's a reason Storm Duck is playing over Cam Smith consistently over the past 3 weeks, and Storm Duck isn't even good. So I think it's time to really have a conversation about Cam Smith's career because I don't think he is an NFL caliber corner, and Chris Greer might have whiffed on that pick. Let's shift to more injury news. Kendall Lamm, who is filling in at right tackle for Austin Jackson, who is out for the season with his knee injury. Lamm left Thursday's game and then returned and then left again. He is dealing with both back and elbow injuries, which is not good because we'll talk about the depth at the offensive line for Miami in just a second. But on Kendall Lamm's injury, Mike McDaniel says they'll get more information later today in the afternoon, but nothing indicates it's super severe. That is really good news for Kendall Lamm and the Miami Dolphins. McDaniel did also go on to say that what this means for next games, I'll have to find more stuff out. So when you're talking about the 2 injuries that McDaniel labeled as not that serious, Kader Kohou and Kendall Lamm, it feels like Lamb's is a little bit more serious in terms of potentially having him miss the next game against the New York Jets, which means the Dolphins will have to make a decision on who they will play at right tackle, assuming Teron Armstead, Robert Jones, Aaron Brewer, and Liam Eichenberg are good on the other spots. Before we kind of dive into what that might look like, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Even though the Dolphins lost, we are still dropping daily content. We still will be live for every single game. 5 more watch parties potentially remain if the Dolphins don't make the playoffs, but videos every single day regardless, so hit that sub button. All right, when you looked at last night's game against the Packers, when Kendall Lamm exited the game and did not play, I said on our watch party that it was going to be interesting to see what they ended up choosing to do in terms of who went on the field. Because Patrick Paul is your top swing tackle at this moment, the rookie out of Houston. But here's also something. He has never played right tackle in his entire career. He played left tackle his entire career in college at Houston. He is a big body guy, and I was not sure if they would trust him to make the switch over to right tackle in that type of game. But they evidently did. And there has been reports out of Dolphins practice that Patrick Paul has been secretly getting a lot of reps at right tackle, potentially in case of this situation arising where Kendall Lamm got hurt. And I think it really ramped up once Austin Jackson was out for the year because they knew that the top offensive tackle on the depth chart behind Lamm and Teron Armstead was Paul, and if Lamm went down, he would need to play. So Patrick Paul did step in there and play right tackle for the Miami Dolphins when Kendall Lamm was out of the game. So I would imagine that if Lamm misses Week 14 against the New York Jets, that Patrick Paul would get that call once again to protect Tua's blind spot. The other option could be Isaiah Wynn, who was activated off the PUP list this week before Thursday Night Football. He has experience playing offensive tackle. He has experience playing interior offensive line. He's a Swiss Army knife. We'll ultimately see If the Dolphins choose to go with Wynn over Paul, I would project them going with Patrick Paul. And I think it was a good experience potentially for Paul as well if he has to play right tackle down the stretch, because he is the projected long-term left tackle once Terron Armstead retires. But what if Terron Armstead decides to come back for one more season? I projected him to retire after this year, but if he comes back, you're going to have Paul just sit on the bench once again. Maybe you move Austin Jackson back to right guard and have Paul be your starting right tackle next year. Maybe that's an opportunity for Miami, because when you talk about how much this offensive line needs to improve, well, maybe it gets improved on the interior by moving Austin Jackson to right guard and having Paul at right tackle, and then the only spot you really need to improve on in the offseason on the offensive line is left guard, because you'll have your left tackle in Armstead, you'll have Brewer at center, who has been good this year, Jackson back at right guard, which he wasn't that good when he played there a couple years ago, but maybe you give it another shot, and then you have Patrick Paul at right tackle. So maybe that's something Miami could look at doing this offseason, but that's a conversation for a different day. All right, to round out today's show, I do want to mention the news on Shaq Barrett, who shocked everyone earlier this week by trying to return to the NFL. He applied for reinstatement. Remember, he retired right before the season. A couple weeks before training camp was supposed to begin in July, he retired. He was a one-year signing for the Dolphins, and he was anticipated to be that third edge rusher behind Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, and then be in that third, fourth mix with Chop Robinson, but he retired, and then he applied for reinstatement. The Dolphins still have his contractual rights, and they had to make the decision on either bringing him to the roster or making no roster moves, or releasing him and allowing another team to sign him for the playoff push. And it sounded like Shaq Barrett was fine playing for the Dolphins. Now, I don't know how much that is true, because earlier on the year, he said the only team he would unretire for is to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, team that he played for most of his career. So I'm not sure there, but ultimately the Dolphins did not activate him to the roster, which means Barrett will not return this season. I think that's the right move. I do. I don't care what people say. I see the national pundits out there saying that it's bad business by the Miami Dolphins. Listen, and this drives me up a wall. Shaq Barrett retired. He said, I'm not playing for your team. I signed a one-year deal. I'm not playing for you. And he already got $3.5 million guaranteed when he signed. Like, why should the Dolphins have to pay him $3.5 million this season and for him to play no snaps for their team, but play for a different team down the playoff stretch? I agree with this move. And you know what? If it comes in the offseason and Shaq Barrett says, you know what, I still do want to return to the NFL. I want to play in 2025. Guess what? The Dolphins then can make the decision if they want to give him a chance to go sign with someone else. Or they can just make a deal and, well, Shaq Barrett is an edge rusher on this team next year and is the Emmanuel Ogbah replacement if you do not re-sign him. And you have Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, and Shaq Barrett next season. Maybe Bradley Chubb too, depending on what the Dolphins do with his contract. So I think this is the right move for the Dolphins. I don't think that he deserved to come back to this roster and take away snaps from the guys that have been here all year, like Quentin Bell. Like, is he better than Quentin Bell? Probably, but Bell has done some nice things and earned a roster spot this year. He does not deserve to have his spot taken away because Shaq Barrett felt like coming back. He's not that guy that he was in Tampa. He's not that guy that he was in Denver to earn that right for the Miami Dolphins, and I like the moves by Miami saying, we're not doing that. We're going to keep the guys that we have. Maybe next year in the offseason we could have a conversation, Shaq. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed because we're going to drop a video tomorrow, and we'll have anything you need around the Miami Dolphins. Week 14 is going to be here in a couple days, and we'll have you covered leading up to that Jets-Dolphins game next Sunday. So hit that sub button. And as always, go Fins.